Yesterday, a man was spotted by a commercial pilot flying a jetpack near LAX, and I don't know why everyone's so alarmed. It was just CJ. Jokes aside, did you know that Rockstar Games has made a movie before? Matter of fact, they've actually made a couple. You might have also wondered before, why isn't there a Grand Theft Auto movie? Well, we're going to answer all of that today in this video. So if you learned something new and you just find it enjoyable, please click thumbs up and subscribe. So why isn't there a Grand Theft Auto movie? Well, in November 2019, Take-Two Interactive CEO Strauss Zelnick sat down with The Wrap and discussed why there actually isn't a Grand Theft Auto movie. And you'd think that the world's most popular game series ever would have a movie, right? Kind of like how books get turned into movies. Well, as we all know, when books kind of get adapted into movies, they just aren't as good. And we kind of saw this with the Max Payne series. So originally, Max Payne 1 and 2 was created by a different game studio that Rockstar Games would later acquire. And they'd go on to make Max Payne 3. But before Max Payne 3 from Rockstar Games in 2012, a Max Payne movie was made in 2008 with Mark Wahlberg. And well, let's just say it wasn't that good, and it's a classic case of book turned into movie that just wasn't that good. Anyways, back to the topic at hand of a Grand Theft Auto movie, Strauss Zelnick explained that the reason that we don't have a Grand Theft Auto movie is because if we were to do something like that, we'd want to have a complete creative control to make sure we expressed Grand Theft Auto in the way that we wanted. And that would mean we would need to finance that motion picture. So basically he's saying that they don't trust anybody else with the Grand Theft Auto name because you could take something that is so valuable, reputable, and just ruin it with a really bad movie. Now, that wasn't the case with Max Payne because it just really had nothing to do with the game series. It strayed away and got really supernatural real quick. But if something were like that to happen with Grand Theft Auto, it might not be the same result, and it might actually discourage a lot of fans and make a lot of people mad. He also explained that we don't have the corporate expertise to do this because only a handful of people inside Take-Two have actually worked in the movie business. And he went on to say that he is actually one of the only people at Take-Two to work in the movie industry. Then he went on to say, you have the most valuable intellectual property ever created by mankind. Grand Theft Auto. We wholly own and control it. Are we really going to let go of that and hope that someone, no matter how talented they are, will do a really good job of it? And The Wrap went on to basically bring up George R. Martin's popular A Song of Fire and Ice series of fantasy novels be turned into what is known as Game of Thrones and how that was very successful. And this is where it gets funny because Strauss Zelnick just said, yo, George Martin's books are not worth what Grand Theft Auto is worth. Sorry. So he was being bluntly honest there, but it is true. So the reason we don't have a Grand Theft Auto movie is basically because Take-Two just doesn't trust anybody with the Grand Theft Auto name outside of themselves. So they don't want anyone to ruin that. And the reason that they don't do it is they just don't have the expertise to do it, and I just don't think they're that worried about it. So with that said, let's go ahead and talk about the Rockstar Games movie. This is something you might not have heard of before. So the first ever movie was the Grand Theft Auto 2 intro movie in 1999. It was a short 8-minute film, and while it was cool, it just really had no substance. I just don't think a GTA movie personally would do all that well. To me, it would just be your typical crime-filled action movie. And, I think it's the little things. And one thing that I think makes Grand Theft Auto so special detail-wise, it's the little things. And one of those would be the heads-up display. How could you adapt that into a movie without, the heads-up display, whether it's the colorful one from Vice City or the bland one from GTA San Andreas? How do you have a Grand Theft Auto movie, say, without that? You know what I mean? I think that's just one of those things that makes Grand Theft Auto so special. You take that away and make a movie, it's just another, like I said, crime-filled action movie. So, Niko Bellic, as most know, was inspired by a character from the 2001 movie Behind Enemy Lines. But that was 20 years ago. That was 2001. And that actor who inspired Niko just doesn't look the same. So by having someone play as Niko that doesn't look entirely like Niko, for example, would instantly ruin the movie for most people, I think. Because when it comes to, say, GTA 4, if it were, to become a GTA 4 movie, you would imagine the Niko Bellic from GTA 4. And if it just didn't look or sound like him, it wouldn't be the same. So the second movie is actually pretty interesting. This is a 2004 film called The Football Factory, based on Tommy Johnson, a member of the Chelsea firm whose life revolves around booze, drugs, and violence, but whose increasing nightmares make him question his life. This film is shot in a documentary style showing the realistic view of football hooliganism. So this actually comes from a time when Rockstar was primarily a British company still. That's why it's centered around something that most Americans aren't familiar with. Heck, I wasn't even familiar with this until I started doing research on football hooliganism. It's a real thing. So in this movie, the only thing related to Rockstar that appears is GTA Vice City, which is shown for a grand total of not 1, 2, 3, but 4 seconds. Other than that, Rockstar is credited as being the executive producer, and most of the time when it comes to executive producers, I found out that these guys are just responsible with providing funds for the movie. They really don't have a major role. It's kind of like a silent investor. They just give you the money for the budgets, and that's that. So we know Rockstar has tons of that money, and their logo can even be seen on this movie poster, but that's it. So what's up with that? It's kind of like Michael in Grand Theft Auto 5. He's a producer on one of these movies that he has absolutely nothing to do with. So I basically think that this was Rockstar's attempt at expanding into the movie scene, which is a very lucrative money-making business. And back then in 2004, video games were not as big as movies were. But as we know now in 2020, video games are way bigger than movies. So it's kind of funny how that has shifted. This movie, however, was just dead on arrival. Its budget was almost $9 million, and it only made around $1.2 million. So perhaps this failure is why Rockstar decided to, well, not stick around with the movies. Now, the third movie from Rockstar Game is actually one that came out in 2005. This one is called Sunday Driver, and this is basically just an hour-long documentary film produced by Rockstar Games that captures the chronicles of California's oldest black lowrider car club and the lowriding lifestyle of Southern California. It was also included in the special edition of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So it's pretty interesting there, and I'm really big into like the lowriding and car scene and things like that. So being that I just found out about this tonight, I'm going to sit down and actually watch this hour-long documentary. And if you guys have the opportunity, I'd recommend you do so as well, just because it's kind of interesting to see Rockstar's take on things outside of video games. Perhaps, though, one day we will get a GTA-related movie or just Rockstar Games-related movie, but for now, I think Rockstar is just going to stick to the games. So if y'all enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe with notifications on. That way you don't miss out if you do enjoy, of course. So anyways, thank y'all for tuning in. I'm Zach Cox. Love you all, and I'll catch you on the flip side.